Hello and welcome to this very special video interview to discuss all things climate and industry collaboration, two topics that have been popular with our readers and are becoming more and more intertwined. So to discuss this further, I am delighted to be speaking to Stephanie Maier, Chair of the Climate Action 100 Plus Global Steering Committee. Thanks so much for your time today, Stephanie.
Great to be here, thank you.
So first of all, can you give us an overview of what Climate Action 100 Plus does, how you work with investors, but in particular fund managers and asset managers?
So launched in December 2017 at the first One Planet Summit in Paris, Climate Action 100 Plus is essentially the world's largest investor engagement, collaborative engagement initiative on climate change. So we're now up to around 700 investors representing 68 trillion in assets under management. And essentially, it's focused engagement on three high-level asks around climate governance, alignment of companies' business strategy with the Paris goals, and also disclosure. And that engagement is essentially focused on 100 systemically important emitters, plus, and that's where the plus comes in, key companies that we consider important in enabling that transition as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. And what are your priorities this year in terms of engagement?
Recently, we issued the second net zero benchmark, which is our way really of being able to assess the progress that the companies that we're engaging with have made. What we saw in terms of where companies had got to was that we saw strong performance on governance. We had over 90% of companies that had achieved some level of board oversight on climate change. We also have 70% of companies that have made a commitment to achieve net zero by 2050. And again, almost 90% of companies that had aligned their disclosure with TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. However, while this is really, really important development, what we will be, and the signatories will be continuing to engage on, is really getting into the detail of how you translate those 2050 targets into nearer term targets, so medium-term targets, also ensuring that the full value chain is taken into account, so looking at the scope 3 emissions alongside the scope 1 and 2 emissions, and also to ensure that companies essentially have those decarbonisation strategies in place, the appropriate capex aligned to deliver on those net zero targets. So those are essentially the priorities, ongoing priorities for the initiative.
We've seen shareholders ramp up their climate activity, but where is this pressure coming from? Is it the regulators? Is it the consumers? Or is it just a case of the need to simply do the right thing?
Certainly those signatories to Climate Action 100 Plus recognise this is really a fundamental part of their fiduciary duty, that this is very much grounded in understanding and managing those climate-related risks in their portfolios, either on their own behalf, their beneficiaries, or their clients. However, I think what's very clear is that we've seen a lot of broader developments in the market that's helping to support a lot of that action. So, for example, if we look at the regulatory side, we've seen a lot of alignment around TCFD, so climate related disclosure, for moving from voluntary to much more mandatory reporting. And clearly that creates a need for investors who are reporting themselves to have the better disclosure from a corporate perspective. And then moving from the disclosure focus to really that action piece, again, what we've seen a lot more of is corporates putting transition plans to the vote. And we saw at the end of April, obviously, the UK launched the Transition Plan Task Force, which essentially is looking at how you define what a good transition plan looks like. And this is really the focus. We know big picture, huge challenge, needing to decarbonize the whole economy across all the sectors as set out in Paris. But how we're going to get there requires obviously government policy, regulation, corporates and investors. So I think there's a huge amount of working in the same direction. The question is whether we can continue to deliver at the pace that we need to.
And finally, what do you want to achieve over the next 2 to 3 years?
So, as I highlighted earlier, there are clear areas where we still need to see progress. When we look at the net zero company benchmark, as I said, a lot of those areas, in common with what we need to do really as a broader economy, is go from that commitment to the action. So it's really going into the detail of how we are going to deliver, net zero aligned business strategies. So that's really shows where there's a lot more progress to be made. I think what we're going to see over the next couple of years is certainly that ratcheting in terms of focus, but also I see a lot of development that we're going to see on corporates really working through on a very sector specific level how they're going to achieve that. There's a lot of your readers may have heard around sort of decarbonisation pathways, sector specific decarbonisation pathways, and that's really a lot of the work that Climate Action 100 Plus will also be focused on, is really ensuring that we have those sector strategies to support the delivery of the net zero goals on our own behalf as signatories, but in those corporates that we're invested in and engaging with as both shareholders and bondholders.
Thanks so much, Stephanie, for sharing all of those insights with us. It was really interesting to hear.
Great, thank you very much.
And I'm pleased to say that Stephanie will be joining us for the Global ESG Summit as a panelist on the 14th of June in London. So be sure to register for that at the link below to hear more from Climate Action 100 Plus.